up, everybody? Welcome to the Horror Heads podcast. Once again, I am Rich Mallery here with my co-host Jerry Lourenco.
Hey, how's it going?
Going all right, and this is episode 7, and I am going to be honest with you, I'm a bit beat up today, and usually, so for those of you who don't know, usually we record this every 2 weeks, but for some crazy reason, we decided to record on back-to-back nights, and last night, I got a little hammered when we were talking about Dawn of the Dead and George Romero, and then, you know, not only was I hammered during the episode, but I had to finish that Whistle Pig bottle, so I continued to drink pretty late, and I'm definitely feeling it today. How about you? How you holding up?
Man, you're probably getting over that heated George Romero conversation. There was definitely some conversations to be had. I think I'm doing all right today. I will see how my excitement for Amityville works out. I'm either going to go too far or too little. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go just yet.
Yeah, so we decided to do an episode specific to Amityville, mainly because I know you're a huge fan of a lot of the films in the franchise, and not to say that they're all good, but I know you like watching them. I'm definitely not as much of a fan. I do like the original, but I also haven't seen a lot of the various knockoffs, spin-offs, sequels, whatever you want to call them. So it was a good opportunity for me to check some of those out. So yeah, excited to talk about it and kind of get your thoughts as to like why you really like the franchise. But before we do that, I do need to have some of the hair of the dog to kind of get rid of my hangover a bit. So I'm ready to start drinking. And what I have tonight is, and I said I was going to drink a different bourbon every episode, and I'm already forgetting the ones that I've drank. I need to keep a list of that. I don't think I've done this one yet. But what I have here is, it's called Distiller's Mark Small Batch Bourbon Whiskey. And it's 91 proof. I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure this is like a Bevmo exclusive, like it's their brand, and it's really affordable. I think it's under $30 for the bottle, and it tastes really good, as you can see as I've drank more than half of it. So I'm going to charcoal filtered. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm going to pour now. What do you have?
Well, we were just talking about it last night, and I'm pouring it as we speak. I got some Four Roses Small Batch Select.
Dude, I can't see. Oh, that looks
Oh
nice.
yeah, there it is. Yeah, there we go.
That's
Nice fresh
that's one of
bottle
my
right here.
favorites. And like even the regular Four Roses, which is pretty cheap, is decent, but that small batch is really
It's
good, I
good.
think.
It's good sipping.
All right, so we're gonna cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. Here you go. It's Tuesday. Oh, we're going up.
Woo.
It's gonna get bad already.
Yeah, no, and this again, it's like under $30. It's a really solid bourbon. It's probably, I would say, similar to a Maker's, but has a little bit of a bite to it. So again, not super high end, but good enough. Good enough for me anyway. And I actually enjoy it. And if you don't need to spend a lot of money, why spend it?
That's it, man. You're gonna be drinking it anyway. This Four Roses is quite delicious. Getting a bit of taste, seems like a Robitussin kind of taste. So I'm guessing there's a cherry, like some sort of cherry in there. Yeah.
You drinking lean tonight? Is that what we're doing?
It's that cherry that's hidden by alcohol and burned, I think. So getting that, obviously some delicious caramel in there. This is still burning actually from when I took that sip. So I'm gonna say it's a long burning finish because I took that sip at least 45 seconds ago. It's 104 proof.
Oh shit.
It's pretty badass. I think this is like their new batch. I had this before and I don't think I liked it as much. I'm really enjoying this. And I feel like they really upped the proof on this. And if you guys want to know what proof is and what it means, you should tune into last night's our previous podcast number 6, and Rich kind of gives us the history of how proof is determined and why they started using it. So that could be really interesting if you're drinking along with us while listening.
I mean, who didn't listen to the last episode? Of course, you know, our fans are rabid and they're eating up everything we do. So okay, so it's lean flavored with a little bit of a bite.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
That's interesting.
You gotta have that lean. So it tastes like Robitussin. Do you know Robitussin tastes like knowing you take that Robot? It's not delicious cherry, is it? Is it like a delicious cherry? No,
I mean, it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, it's like hidden back there with like that sweetness, but you can tell it's a berry, and then there's like a lot of something on top of it. In this case, and probably that case, it's some sort of alcohol.
Oh, I just swallowed. So I have like the ice cubes are really small, and I just swallowed really like small ice cubes I didn't intend to.
is getting off the rails already. We didn't even start yet. So I can see what kind of night this is gonna be. It's gonna get out of hand.
And we said this was going to be
I,
like an easy night. We said this would be a short one, but you know how it goes. We'll see.
No, it's not. I do have I have a big surprise that's going to come at the halfway mark of this episode, and Rich has no clue what I have planned here. It came to me last night after I was a little bit tipsy after the last podcast. I was thinking about something, and I was like, wow, why am I thinking about that? That's stupid. I'm like, no, that's a great drinking game.
Oh no.
So I turned it into a drinking game, and you're going to learn all about it at the halfway mark. So yeah, it's going to be very exciting.
Well, most likely I'm going to pass out before then, so I'm just going to so I won't even get there. See me playing it by yourself. Okay, so before we get into
Used to
Amityville,
that.
I did watch a movie last night, and yeah, I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't think I was going to enjoy it. So I ended up watching that movie Men from A24.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so I personally did not like it, and I going into it, I was like, I know I'm not going to like this movie because I'm sure it's talking about how bad men are and how what pieces of shit we all are. I actually didn't get that from the movie. Like, it didn't really seem that it was preaching anything whatsoever. And I watched it with a female, and they didn't have any take on it either, that there was any deeper meaning. So the movie is basically this woman who's pretty kind of bland and just uninteresting. Her husband commits suicide, and she decides to go to a huge old house in the middle of nowhere. I believe they're in England somewhere. And while she's there, she is stalked by various men who I believe are all the same man, just different like evolutions. Like, one is like a man who's kind of like a child, one is kind of like a monster. And they basically kind of just fuck with her, I guess. And maybe she goes insane, maybe she doesn't. At the very end, the last 15 minutes, I don't even remember what happened really, but there's a ton of body horror, and it's just disgusting. And if you're into body horror, like, that's cool, but like, I did not think it was going to go in that direction. But at the very end of the movie, I just didn't get really what the point of it was. So maybe, I don't know what your take was, but I was kind of bored waiting for something big to happen. And something big, I guess, does happen. But by the time that I was already kind of checked out.
So I actually saw it when it came out. So that was quite a while ago. I think about 2 years ago. So I don't remember it in detail, but what I do remember is like the last 15, 20 minutes. It was absolutely absurd. And I don't think it was supposed to make sense. I think it was just kind of tapping into like that genre where it just kind of like throw everything like at a wall and see like what happens and what kind of meaning you could pull from that. And I usually call that like an absurd, like absurdity or absurd genre or something like that. That's kind of like what I took from it. And I absolutely remember all that body horror, which is not my favorite type of horror. So I was like, man, this is disgusting. And I remember there's a naked guy running around for quite some time. I don't remember why, but
You never
I was
find
like,
out
cool.
why. Yeah, there's just some naked yellow guy, like, kind of lurking for the most part. But yeah, no. So I guess it just kind of reminds me that I shouldn't have expectations going into a movie, because again, I was going in like, oh, I'm gonna hate this movie, and again, not to say I didn't hate it, but I hated it for a completely different reason than I thought I was going to. It wasn't the movie I thought it was going to be. It was definitely something different. I just wish I understood why, and I think I would have liked it more if the main character was more interesting. Like, I did not care for her at all. Like, she was just bland, and I didn't really get much about it. Like, maybe if she was, again, more interesting, more likable, more unique, I could have got into it and maybe like felt her trauma more, I guess. I think it was really overly artistic too. And I think like A24 is kind of in that zone right now where they're really trying to, they've always been kind of trying to do some kind of different types of stuff, but sometimes it's hit, and a lot of times it ends up being a miss. It's just too out there for me anyway. Not to say I'm not a fan of some of their movies, but some of them are a little too
That
much.
elevated horror is a hit or miss for sure. It has to strike that right chord of balance. You know, if it's like too over your head, or you have to do some sort of like research before you watch a film. I mean, it's not going to kind of hit you right, and you probably won't watch it again. And I know we got into this pretty deep when we were talking about Hellraiser and those types of movies. And sometimes like a lot of people are maybe the first time they're going into a film, they're just going to watch it at face value because they're just trying to absorb like what they're looking at, and they're going to make the determination of whether or not they like that film based on just like that feeling, nothing deeper. So totally get what you're saying, that maybe it's just like too much, because now like you either A, have to research it, B, watch it again. You
Yeah.
know,
And I'm not
it's
gonna do
like,
either of those
are you
things.
gonna do either? So it
No.
just comes out as you don't like it. And so that's a miss for me for either the writer or the director, because it should have been, a little more accessible.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't mind movies that make me think, but this wasn't like I was contemplating various themes and concepts in the movie. I was kind of just like, okay, what was all that about? And yeah, again, I could Google it if I really wanted to, but it wasn't interesting enough for me to really care. So yeah, lost opportunity. I'll never watch it again, but that's fine. I tried it. So anyway, let's shift gears, and I'm going to tell a little ghost story right now. So
You're gonna tell a ghost story? Oh
well,
shit!
not really,
Okay.
not really.
See this,
But
man. We need to plan this show out better. I really have no idea what's going on in the
I
show.
mean, I don't either. I don't
Okay.
either. All right. So anyway, so picture this. It's November 13th, 1974. Family of six living on Long Island. Pretty nice house, middle of Amityville. One night, Ronald DeFeo Jr., 24 years old, I believe, wakes up in the middle of the night, decides to slaughter his entire family, his mother, father, two brothers, and two sisters. He commits these murders, is arrested for these murders. 1 year later, George and Karen Lutz, is that her name?
Kathy.
Kathy Lutz. George and Kathy Lutz decide to move into this house. They get it for a steal. They know about the murders. They move in and immediately start experiencing supernatural phenomenon. And after 28 days, they decide it's too much and they run away and move out. And thus the legend of Amityville is born.
There's actually so that's some trivia. Do you know how many movies there are that have Amityville in the title?
I don't know, but I would say, I'm going to say 35, and that's just a guess.
That's a good guess. It's actually 65.
I wasn't even
I'm not
close.
joking.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, that's yeah,
Wow.
65. So it's pretty funny. So the DeFeos, they're real people. So this is based on a true story of events that happened, on Long Island, and it's a pretty interesting story. See, my father was a construction worker, and he was doing some work on that block in the 70s when the DeFeos actually lived there. And he was like a young man. It wasn't really great at what he was doing yet. And they were digging like the street up. I don't know exactly what they were doing. He didn't give me all the details, but apparently they hit a pipe and it caused a water leak, and the Feo family actually their water stopped, so they were really pissed off. So my father told me actually that the mother and the daughter came out and yelled at him and all these construction workers, and he said he never heard women, especially one that was probably like 15, the daughter, curse the way that they were cursing at these men because they lost their water. And he says they were like the biggest assholes he has ever seen in his life, and that is the connection that he had with them. And I was like, wow, that's a crazy story, because he told me much later in life. I mean, he knew I was a big horror fan, but he never actually told me like this story until I was like an adult. But I was like, holy cow. So he actually saw those people before they met their fate.
That is interesting. And like, did the murders occur that night? Like, are you saying that like because your dad hit the pipe
My father had
and they
nothing to
were
do with that
pissed,
shit, man.
they were pissed off and
Could take a shower.
so he
There
just
was no
murdered
running water.
everybody?
Yeah, no, I don't think it was that close. I'm not quite sure how long that family lived there
9 years,
before.
actually. Oh, they lived there 9 years before the murders happened. So it wasn't like they were just there. They had been there a while.
Yeah, so it could have been any time during the 70s. He didn't give me like a year. I feel like if it was close, he would have told me like, hey, those people, I was there a week before. It was nothing like that. It could have been years before, but that was just it just stuck with him because how awful these people were and how rude they were. So that's it. That's who we're dealing with. Those are the victims in this first half of this story.
Yeah, and it's like there's a lot of different speculations on actually what happened, what Ronald DeFeo's reasons were. The final thing I think he ended up saying was that he heard voices, but before then, there was thinking that he might have been going after the life insurance money for his father. I think he told one story where someone else broke into the house and did it. They told another story where him and the older sister planned it, and she's the one that actually killed the children. And then when he found out, he got pissed and killed her. Like, there's lots of different things. I believe all of the family members were either killed in bed or their bodies were found in bed, which is really interesting because he used a rifle, which is pretty loud. You'd think other people would have heard him once the first two shots were fired, but then I believe he also said he might have drugged them, so they were fast asleep. We'll never know really what happened, but it is a really interesting story. And, is the plot for the original Amityville horror movie, which I believe came out in 1978. So yeah, so this, I would say, out of all of the ones I've seen, this is the only one that I like. And again, I haven't seen all 65. I've probably seen 5 or 6 of them. And maybe, the other 59 that I haven't seen are really good. But this one I do really like. It's a classic. I agree why it's a classic. It's something that you could see a lot of films have borrowed from, or just themes and concepts that you've seen in other films. I think again, it's there's definitely things about the movie that I would take out. Like there's a lot of coverage of one of the priests that enters the house and like what happens to him after, like he goes in the house, some bad shit happens and it kind of follows him, and more tragedy happens to him. I probably could have done without that, like 20 minutes of that. But I think also this movie was based on a book that was written, a true crime book. And I think they were probably trying to cover as much as possible. So what do you think about it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a film from the 70s. There's going to be a lot of extra and a lot of just nothing happening. I mean, I think that's one of the the biggest points of like every movie in the 70s. There's always like a half hour where it doesn't matter what the genre is of the film. It's just like nothing. It's like they just try to film the mundane. And I guess it was a technique that maybe was popular back then. I don't know. No one told me, but it was like kind of unspoken. I mean, everything is like that. Jaws is like that. I mean, every movie, in the set, and this is the same. This movie is probably about a half hour, too long, but I think it's a great story, and it does follow this family through their 28 nights of being attacked by supernatural entities and dealing with paranormal activities. And watching this as a kid, it was pretty darn scary if you ask me. Just moving objects and disembodied voices and things like that. It was all kind of scary to me. And you mentioned the priest. There is that scene where he comes into the house for some reason. I know they wanted him to do like some sort of blessing for the house, but like no one lets him in. So he just like lets himself in, and he's just like walking around the house, and then he gets up obviously to that room with those windows that became like so iconic. And I'm gonna talk about that in a second too. But he gets like attacked by bees
Oh
in
no, it's
that
flies.
room.
It's
And
flies.
oh, flies, whatever it was. Yeah, like bees or flies. And it's like, that really stayed with me. I was always nervous as a kid whenever I like got like by like a window and things like that. I'm like, oh man, I hope I don't get attacked. And it was like it's something that kind of stayed with you. It wasn't like the scariest thing, but you're like, oh man, I'm like, if this could happen to someone, that's kind of crazy. Obviously, yeah. So those windows, I just love how they like shot this film. I don't know how they made something like just so regular and uninteresting. They made it almost like the star of the film is these two windows that if you know the house, it's not even the front of the house, it's actually the side of the house. So if you were to walk up to the house, that's the side of it. And you would have to walk around to the other side to actually go into the front door. So I find it amazing that they chose to focus on the side of the house, and it made it so creepy and scary. And if you saw like a dim light in there, like, oh my God, there's a light in there. It's a freaking window. It's like, why is that scary? But it was. They just kind of developed this aura. And I don't know if it was the music or just the way they filmed it, but it made those windows terrifying, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so lots of things I want to kind of add to that. So the windows, I think for me, why they're terrifying and iconic is they're like eyes. They almost look like eyes to me, that they're watching you, and that's what I've always took with me. So the scene, a couple of things. The scene you were talking about with the flies attacking the priest, I think why that's so effective, and I think it is effective, is they used real flies. They actually covered the priest in honey so the flies would stick to him.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm watching this and I'm like trying to like see how they did it, and I'm just like, wow, this actor has got balls to sit there and have real flies all over him. And why I think that is so effective is before I rewatched this, and I've seen this movie a bunch of times, I rewatched the remake with Ryan Reynolds. And this movie is so much better than that. And it's basically the same movie. Like there's not a lot of deviations other than certain choices. Like in this one, in the original, like the babysitter's just this like nerdy kid. In the remake, she's like this like hot, slutty teenager. Like there's these little nuances. And I think also Ryan Reynolds' performance is awful. Like he just he's not believable as this man who's descending into madness and becoming like overly aggressive and angry. And whereas I think James Brolin is the actor in the original, like does a really good job of, he just looks pissed off. Like he did a great job acting. But also there's a lot of CGI in the remake, especially when it comes to like they actually show one of the characters has like an imaginary friend, Jody, who's supposed to be one of the DeFeo kids that got killed. And in the remake, they actually show her, and she's not scary because it's like a CGI kid ghost, or however they made it look. It just looked terrible. And I think this is effective because they don't really show you the ghost. They don't show you a lot. It's a lot left up to your imagination, which again, to maybe younger people might see this and be bored to death, but like for me, it's intense and effective. The other thing I just wanted to talk about really quick is like, about the 70s movies. You're right. They usually do have 30 to 40 minutes where like nothing happens. And it's funny, I was watching not a horror movie, but I was watching, it's one of my favorite movies, and I just forgot this because I must turn it off at a certain point or I zone out. But I was watching Play Misty for Me, and there's like 20 minutes where they're at like a jazz fest and there's just jazz bands playing for 20 minutes. And like I'm like, this movie goes from this intense thriller to now I'm watching a jazz concert, and like no reason, like other than I guess probably Clint Eastwood was a fan of the jazz fest and wanted to go to it or show it or promote it in some way. But it was just interesting, like it just totally takes you out of the movie. And I think I just always either skip over that or I just maybe I turn it off at that point. But I feel like every movie has that where again, it's not even things related to the story, it's just a bunch of just nothing
Car
happening.
driving, it could be people at a park, it could literally be anything. Yeah, that's the deal with 70s movies. Yeah, so I want to talk about Ryan Reynolds and James Brolin here. So I agree with you. I think Ryan Reynolds comes off as kind of like a roid raging angry dad, where James Brolin, man, he never breaks like that mood. Like feel like you're watching someone who's gradually first getting sick. Like I'm just getting over having a cold, and in the first few minutes of the film, it's like, man, that guy's getting a cold, and I was like believing it, and then all of a sudden he just never lets that go. All of a sudden he's freezing all the time, and it doesn't matter like what the scene is, what he's doing. He doesn't break that. That's what's supposed to be happening to him. So if he's eating breakfast, he's cold. If he's, chopping wood or whatever it is, he's cold. And I think that that's just like a commitment to the character that I don't think you really see in the remake. So I think, James Brolin really sells the character as someone who's kind of like spiraling out of control, and it's really like we don't know if it's any fault to his own, or if it's the house, or if it's him. I mean, I guess if you're believing into the story, it would be the house. So that the house is really doing this to him, so he doesn't have any control of it. And I think it's just amazing. Like I just holds on. Like the guy looks like he's sick. He looks like he's cold, and I'm like, I get kind of cold like watching him, and I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, and I think another difference is too is like in the Ryan Reynolds remake, he starts off as this like really kind, loving father, and the kids aren't his. His wife has three kids from another marriage, and he comes across like really likable and lovable, and then just kind of not even slowly, just kind of gradually, and he does go in and out of that pissed off versus, kind, caring person. In the original, like he seems kind of like a little pissed off to begin with, like he's troubled. Like you get the feeling that, he found this younger woman who's like hot and like wants to like fuck him and stuff like that. And she's probably a catch for him, but she has these like three kids that he's got to now deal with. And he probably, I get the feeling that he kind of got almost suckered into this marriage just to kind of like, oh, I gotta support you now, and then realizes like, oh shit, like I really just wanted to be with this woman, and now I gotta deal with all of this other shit. And I think he starts off kind of like not happy, and then I think that's why the house is able to kind of like accelerate those feelings in kind
Infiltrate
of,
him,
yeah,
yeah.
they could turn him like, because nobody else in the movie turns, so it's like why would the house choose him to be the one to kind of go through all of this. And I think it's because he was already kind of
So he's a flawed character,
very
totally.
flawed
Yeah,
character.
I
Yeah.
could see that, and that would kind of relate to like Ronnie DeFeo, who was like supposed to be a known drug user, and he had like gambling problems, and pretty much like all the vices in the world like were his issues. So I think they were just trying to follow that, just and capture, and the house captured another like flawed character. Yeah, that's a good point, and yeah, I do have a note here that on day 4 mom did dress up like a schoolgirl, and I wasn't quite
Yes.
sure like what that
Yes.
was what that was about. She seems a little too, I don't know, old to be doing that, but I guess she was trying to keep things exciting for this guy, and maybe she saw that he was going through some changes. But I mean, I think at that point he was already like kind of getting sick, and dealing with like all these issues. It probably didn't start here, but obviously they had that trope where it's, the rooms are cold and they're trying to like fix the heater and all that stuff. And I just wonder if this was like one of those first instances where they started doing that for like signs of paranormal activity occurring. Because I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I keep my house at like 63, so every room is cold, and I'm not gonna know if there's a ghost here, but apparently they did. So, I just wonder. I can't think of a movie before this one where that was kind of like, the sign of paranormal activity.
A few things that are like you see a bunch of movies, and I don't know if it's the first time either. And again, they based this off of a book, right? So this is probably like their account, and maybe these stories have come up before. But the thing where they are always like waking up at the same time, that's like something you see a lot in movies. The like walls bleeding, the iconic "get out" voice that you hear is fucking creepy as hell. And getting back to the ages, and I don't think they tell you the ages of the two characters. I could probably look it up and find out what they really were, but I got the feeling that she was much younger than him, even though she had 3 kids. I kind of felt like she was probably maybe mid 20s to late 20s, and he was maybe 40s. That's just what I thought. So like it kind of made sense to me that, again, maybe she's a little older that, but she's still kind of like young and prime, and just for whatever reason, maybe had kids really early. I don't know. But yeah, like he just again seems miserable like throughout a lot of the movie. And it's like, she's this like young, you know, beautiful woman doing ballet, just being sexy, and he's just this like crotchety bearded dude that's just like trying to pay the bills.
Construction worker, yeah, he's being a dad, and he does take her out on that date night, and they go to a nice Amityville restaurant, and I'm assuming I know what restaurant that is because there really aren't many restaurants in Amityville town. So I don't think there were a lot more in the 70s. So I'm assuming it was that one, but that is the scene where the babysitter does get locked in that closet. And that was like really scary, I think.
Absolutely.
And as a kid, I think every single time I went to a closet, I in the back of my head, and every time I was in the closet, maybe the room was like a little dark or something like that. I'm like, is this door gonna shut? Am I gonna get locked in here? Because like just that scene of her like clawing away at that door and just pounding on it until like there was like starting to get like smears of like blood, and there was like blood coming from her nails, and she was just like just making like these sounds that were like so primal and just agonizing. And I'm like, oh my god. And like the creepy kids are just sitting there listening to her for like 2 hours while the parents are out to dinner just because Jody told them it was a fun game. But like you can't hear this person that's like really struggling in there. She was like losing it. And that's another scene that really stuck with me. There's not going to be like a lot of jump scares or anything like that happens in this film. Everything's going to be like a real slow kind of burn, and you have to kind of appreciate what they are showing you. And this is like one of those spots where it's like, man, that is terrifying. And there was no lock on the door. It's like, man, that is crazy. How did anyone explain that? Imagine that babysitter, and it's like there's no lock. She's like she's pounding on that door for like an hour, and she couldn't get out, and there's no lock. Like if that wasn't a sign for those people to get the hell out of there and that there's some issues going on. I don't know what would be, but I guess we find out later on what's enough for them to finally, realize that they're, this is getting out of hand, and that 25% off the listing price really wasn't worth it.
Yeah, yeah. If you could compare like a movie from the late 70s, 80s to a movie in the 2000s, just to see the difference, and I think you take that scene of the babysitter locked in the closet, and with the original and the remake, and that's the difference in how movies like became versus how they were. And you could, for me, again, one is really effective, the other one is really lame. And I had a note for how much they paid for the house, and in 1975, I guess is when they supposedly bought the house, they paid $80,000 for it. What do you think that house is worth now? Like 2 million?
1.3 million, I
Oh,
would
really? That's it?
say.
I mean, that's still a lot, but yeah.
Yeah.
So they should have hung on to it, is what you're saying. They should have just fuck the ghosts. Like it's an investment.
There is a discount, obviously, because of what happened in there. And like I said, it's a weird house. It's the side of the house faces the street. So it is a quirky house. And me personally, when buying a house, it needs to be like centered on a lot, and it has to be front facing. And I can't bend on that. I have too many issues that I can't bend on that for someone who's willing to buy a side facing house is it's already kind of telling me a lot. So, I mean, the fact that they bought it, I mean, yeah, it was a good price. The fact that your friend bought it, that you got that laptop from, I mean, it's just very strange that people would even be interested in that house. It is a nice area, and the backyard is probably worth all the money, just for that.
Yeah, and if anyone's curious to hear my experience actually being in that house, listen to episode 1 where I talk all about it. But I'll tell you why, like, whatever they charge for that house, I would never buy it, and there's one reason. The house makes Mr. Lutz impotent.
What do you mean?
There was the scene where he was trying to make love to his wife, and
In the beginning,
was it, I forget when it happens in the movie, but there is a point where he's unable to get it up.
you could be right. I have a note that he was pissed because he couldn't, go, if you will, but because the kids ran in, and I was thinking, I'm like, what is this guy? This guy has like 3 kids running around. What
Oh,
is he
no, I
doing
think it
trying to?
happens again later
Oh,
on.
happens
I think,
again.
yeah, I
Okay.
think they do try to get it on early, and then later on in the movie, his wife is trying to, I think she wakes him up or something like that, and he
That
just
house
can't
is a
get it up.
nightmare. That's a nightmare. No one should move there. That's horrible. That's strike 2 for that poor guy, man. George, man. I'm sorry. That whole movie did not work out for him in that department, and I feel bad. But anyway.
One
just
thing,
just
I like about this movie is the house genuinely looks creepy. And what I mean by that is everything is really beat up, everything is dirty and dingy. It needs to be painted, cleaned. Like even the lampshade in the kids' room is like beat up and bent out of shape. And you see like movies try to make houses look fucked up, but like it still looks like a production designer did it. This house legit looks like it was fucked up. And just an interesting note, when the Lutzes actually did move into the house, they kept all of the DeFeo furniture. They were able to buy all the furniture for $400. So a lot of the furniture was supposedly still there when the DeFeos, when all that shit happened. But yeah, the house just looks creepy and just messed up. And again, it really is its own character, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, and they try that a lot in other movies, The Conjuring and things like that. And the first thing I always think about is, guy's a home all day, like fucking dust, or I don't know, like paint or something. Why do you want like the same walls that like the DeFeos had? Or, I could picture them like chain smoking in the 70s day and night. You walk into that house, it probably smells like a giant like wet cigarette, and it's like you're there all day. How come no one's like cleaning these houses? How come that's not a major part of the storyline, that they're just like living their life? Like they just moved in and now they're there. There's nothing left to do here. We live here now.
And that did actually drive me a little nuts in this movie, because there's a scene, I think it's like day 5 or day 4. It's like they've been there like a few days, and the wife is painting like a statue of the Virgin Mary. Yet you see all these boxes of shit that needs to be unpacked.
Yeah, what are you
Like,
doing? Is it the time to paint?
like I'm gonna paint this statue instead of like unpacking everything that I own, or like cleaning or doing anything. Like I'm gonna focus on the statue. And I think they're just trying to show how religious and Christian she was, and And I guess that's the juxtaposition of, you know, the evil of the house and things like that. But I thought it was really silly. It's like that would be the last thing I would do. And if I was the husband, like I get why he's
Nice.
pissed. If I come home from a hard day at work and I see boxes everywhere and I'm like, okay, I guess, you know, my
Dusty
wife didn't get
sheets.
to it. Yeah, dusty sheets. And then like
Ronnie DeFeo slept in.
and then she's just painting his dad.
Fading, yeah, that's weird. So they did try to blame a lot of what happened in this house on it being built on an Indian burial ground, and it's not the first time. It might be the first time. It's definitely not the last time they use like this sort of premise to explain like why a house is haunted. And so what they did is they blamed it on the Shinnecock tribe, and that they built this house on top of that burial ground. And you know, I don't want to ruin this for anyone, but being on Long Island, I could tell you that this house is nowhere close to the Shinnecock tribe, which is probably at the bare minimum 50 miles away. So they got some things right. There is a Shinnecock tribe, there is a Shinnecock town on Long Island, but it's really, really far away from Amityville, and there's really no way that they would have a burial ground there. And also, whenever they talk about like burial grounds, it wasn't really any different for like Indians. I don't think they dug 100 feet into the ground to bury their, you know, their dead. You know, it's still gonna, you know, they're still gonna have to move them or whatever they have to do if they're gonna build a house there, because it would clearly be right there. They wouldn't be underneath the house. You know, the house goes further than 6 feet into the ground. So
I know it's like they do that in Poltergeist too, where they're like the big thing is they built it on top of a graveyard. But yeah, wouldn't they like how would they
you would
not
have you
dig up the
couldn't do
bodies?
you
You
could
couldn't.
not do it
Yeah.
because it's only a couple feet. I mean, especially if we're talking if they did this like in the 1800s, they didn't dig more than 10 feet. There's no way.
Probably
But
2 feet is probably what they did, right? Because like who's digging these huge holes?
yeah, nobody.
Yeah.
And they tried to connect it to this guy John Ketchum, who was a satanic worshiper who I guess lived in that house originally, I think is what they were trying to do. And I found that really interesting because again, I don't know if that person really lived there. I know there is a person with that name that is in the history of Amityville, and I don't know how important this guy was, but literally right across from like Ocean Avenue, one block over, is a Ketchum Street. So I think that's really interesting that a lot of these like original people who, you know, lived here have like streets named after them or the town named after them. Amityville is not the original town name. Do you have any idea what the name was?
I don't know, but I'm assuming it's German because I lived a town over when we lived in Lindenhurst. That was renamed from a German name during World War II, I believe. So what? I have no idea.
You're not going to believe the name of this. So Amityville used to be called Huntington Southwest Neck.
Okay, I definitely would not have guessed that. And that does not seem German, but okay.
And there was this guy named Samuel Ireland. He decided that we should change the name of the town. And they're like, all right, what do you want to name it? He's like, well, my boat is called Amity, so let's name it that. And
Are you
they named it,
serious?
yeah, they named it Amityville, which means friendly. So friendly village. And again, another strange thing is, so I don't know if it's named after him, but there is an Ireland Street very, very, very close to these Ketchum and Ocean Avenue streets. So it's all really connected. So that they do mix a lot of history. And I never read the book. I just wonder if the book was more accurate as far as history of the town, but I feel like someone did study the town and they just took out like maybe the boring parts and filled it in with like more interesting things. But it is tied loosely to some truth, but it's most of it is a lot of bullshit, I would say.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
and I'm gonna say Amityville is kind of creepy, but it's for different reasons.
And I believe the bar is still there, or at least when I lived in New York, the bar is still there. And that is the bar that after Ronald DeFeo killed his family, I believe he went to the bar and said, my family's all dead. And that's what happened. And there's a scene in the movie that I actually thought it was like kind of ridiculous and funny. So Mr. Lutz he rides his motorcycle to the, I guess, the library. He steals a library book, I think, on the occult. Then he goes and gets the blueprints of the house. And then he goes to a bar. Like it just seemed odd that like I'm gonna do all this stuff because I want to like investigate, but now I'm just gonna go to the bar and have a drink. And yeah, and it's funny, like he's at the bar and the bartender's like, "Wow, you look just like that murderer from a year ago," which to me is like completely odd. And I think he does resemble him somewhat. They both had beards, but Mr. Lutz seems like he's like this 40-year-old man, and maybe I'm wrong on that. And DeFeo is 24. It just seems odd that like, by the way, you look like this 20-year-old murderer that used to come in here. Like, what an odd thing to say. And maybe that did happen, but I found that funny. I was like, what the fuck? Like that. Imagine you go to a bar and someone said that to you. Like,
Well, happens to me all the time,
yeah, that's
actually.
true. You kind of do look like Ronald DeFeo. Hold on.
So George, so,
Take off the
so
hat.
George goes. I'm not gonna do that. I like to think I look like Rob Zombie, but not really. Anyway, George goes to the bar. It's called the Witch's Brew in the movie. In real life, it's called Henry's Bar. Right now, that bar would be a pizza place called Parisi's,
Oh,
but
it's not a bar anymore?
no, it's not. No,
Oh.
it closed like maybe I think like 15 years ago, I
Did you
think.
go in it? Were you ever in it?
No, no, I never went in it, but it is definitely it's walking distance from the house. It's about half a block away. So I could understand like why Ronnie went there, and if they're trying to be location correct, then George would absolutely go there because it would be his not just the town bar, but it'd be his blocks
And probably
bar.
the only bar around, really, because
It's at the end of his block. It is 600 feet away from the house, I would say. So it's definitely a place that he would frequent, and I really wanted to go there. I was really disappointed to see that it was closed.
yeah, odd that we just never thought to go there. But there were so many bars in Lindenhurst, which is the town we grew up in. We didn't really
Yeah,
need to leave.
you wouldn't go to that one, and I'm scared the guy's gonna be like, "Hey, you look like this guy that used to kill people that were
Yeah.
up the block." But I don't know. I do want to get back into the movie though.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, right,
let's
right.
get into so I think that we can just dive into the last act, which I think is when things really just kind of get crazy.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I think like it's a little nuts too. So he meets this I guess a couple at the bar, and this woman I think is like super into the occult, and they're gonna like go back and see the house. And George Lutz is like, okay, like before you come in, I just want to talk to my wife and just kind of make sure like she knows you guys are coming in to do this shit. They wait maybe 1 minute and then they decided to go into the house and go right to the basement. Like they couldn't wait 5 minutes for him to come out. And then literally within like a minute, she just starts bashing a hole in the wall. Like, what if like imagine that. You like not only did you tell this woman to stay outside, but you come in, she's in the basement. You know your wife is going a little nuts because of all this shit, and then she's busting holes in the wall. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
I mean, apparently everyone feels invited into that house. I mean,
I
the
mean, maybe the
priest
house is calling them, right? Like,
they just walk right in. And I mean, yeah, I mean that basement too. That was creepy as hell, man. I every time I take something apart, I'm scared I'm gonna break a hole in something. It's gonna be a red light behind it. I'm like, oh no, it's the room. There it is. That's where all the shit happened. And that's where I guess they were saying that that's where like maybe some satanic activity was occurring there. I guess maybe in the past. I don't know if who had access to that because it seemed like it was pretty sealed up, but it could kind of help with the lore of the supernatural power of the house that it's kind of rooted in.
like whatever was behind there, whether it was body. I never figured that out either. Like what was actually
It
behind
could have
there.
been where that John Ketchum guy used to practice his magic and spells and stuff like that, but I don't know if the DeFeos had access to that. So I guess the next people that found it was these people. So I'm thinking that's at the chronological order of what happened with that room, I think.
And I forget since I watched a couple of these movies. Like a big thing is the well. Was the well behind that wall? Because I think they say that the well was like haunted or something like that. The other movies have it too, I think.
Two, yeah, it was like part two.
And
So
there actually
it's in the
was a well.
basement
Yeah, there
supposed.
is a well that was they closed up at some point, like in real life. So I forget if that was there or not. So question. So in the I guess towards the end, they see like these red lights, like red eyes of a weird animal. And I always couldn't figure out what that is. What is that supposed to be? Is that like a bull, a dog, a pig? I don't really know.
I don't know. It's not really. clear to me. I just thought it might have been something like supernatural.
Yeah, some kind of demon or
Because
something, right?
you
Yeah, I
know,
just
around
wasn't sure like what
camp.
if it was symbolic of something or whatnot. I mean, it's clearly a monster because it's huge, but I was just wondering what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think sometimes with, especially with these 70s films, they kind of like when they're dealing with the special effects, I think they like to try a lot of different things, and whether they work or not is completely like doesn't determine if it makes the cut. So it feels like one of those situations, like, oh, would it be creepy if we had these eyes? Like, yeah, man, let's throw some eyes in there. Can you do it? Yeah, I could do it. And they just put it in. Like, I don't know if there's like anything deeper to that, because I never heard anyone, discuss it in depth. Probably seen the movie 80 times.
Yeah, you probably need to read the book. It's probably something like from the book that makes more sense. You know what's also interesting about this movie is it was nominated for an Oscar, apparently, for best score. Which the score is good, the music's good, but it's interesting that this movie as Oscar nominated. You wouldn't think that. And another thing I read too, James Brolin, the actor, they was actually a lower budget on this movie, so he took a lower salary and he took like 10% of the gross theatrical receipts. And since the movie was really successful, if you take inflation into account, he actually made $63 million from this movie just to put. But he did say that he couldn't act for like 2 years because he couldn't get cast in anything because they thought he was like the way he played the character like seemed too mean and too aggressive, and they're like, we don't want you in anything. So it took him 2 years to find a role, but he got. I mean, he's probably rich already, but he got really rich from this movie by taking that deal.
Wow, that's cool. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as like, I understand it's a horror movie, but I mean, it's a bit of a thriller too. So I can see maybe why it was nominated. It's not as horror, I guess, as Salem's Lot or something like that. So maybe kind of falls in that category.
Yeah, and it's one of those
Gore.
movies
It's not
that
gory,
no, it's not gory, and it's kind of like there were like these really big, high-profile horror movies in the 70s, right? Like you have The Exorcist, you have like The Omen, you have like this one. So there were like these bigger, and maybe this had a smaller budget, but like these bigger budget, kind of more mainstream horror movies that were really for more audiences. They weren't just for like the horror fans. They were for like date night. You would go see Amityville Horror. Oh, you know what was interesting? Like, so there's a scene where there's like $1,500 that's missing.
Yeah, with
Like,
the brother. Yeah.
did the ghost steal the money? Like, where'd it
Just
go?
fucking with him. Yeah. I
Did it
think,
hide it somewhere?
yeah, I think it was just messing with him. Yeah. So, that bothered me. I rewound that part probably 5 times, and I just wanted to see whose fault it was. I have come to the conclusion at 100% it is a supernatural issue, because I paused it as he's putting the money away. I watched very carefully, even when Jacket was off camera. I'm like, who's by it? Who moved it? Would it fall? Was it turned in any way? Would the money spill out? Nothing happens. It was 100% supernatural activity. So it always bothered me, because I'm like, yeah, who would touch this? And
Right. And how does
why
a
is the
ghost
ghost
steal
kind of,
money though? Like, it's like,
it was just screwing like the brother, though. It was like his brother-in-law. It wasn't even related to that. I think it was just the house kind of like acting up, showing you like, flexing some of its supernatural powers. That it's like, hey, look, we'll screw with anybody that
Mhm.
comes in here, and we don't even care if it's like your most important day or if you need this more than anything. It's like, we'll screw with you too. So yeah, I thought that was a ballsy move on the house,
Right?
but
Rob a
you
guy.
know, but it always drove me crazy, because I'm like, where did the money go?
Yeah, because it's
And
very
I'm
quick.
like,
He puts it in his pocket, and then like a minute later, it's gone. Like, it's like, how
it's
did that happen?
gone. It's
Yeah.
gone. And I'm like, this guy's drunk. He's not even paying attention. He missed his pocket. He dropped it on the floor. No, you could do that for
Yeah, yeah.
sure. And I watched it in slow motion. I rewound it. I was paying attention to the position of everyone in the room and where the jacket was. It's definitely some sort of supernatural shit. So yeah, it's funny how you talked about that, because I don't even know why it bothered me. It just did.
No, I always thought
you
about that
know?
too. Like, how did that happen? Like, I have no idea.
I mean, I'm hoping that my house is haunted and I find actually $1,500, but it never really happens.
Yeah, maybe
So
the ghost stole it from the person who lived in your house before. But you
I
keep your house so cold that you'll never know. So,
I'll never know. So
let's see. Do I have any other notes on this one? Oh, when the kid falls down the basement stairs, I cracked up. I don't know why, but that made me laugh. especially a little kid, a little annoying kid. You know, it was creepy. There's that scene where the girl's like rocking in the rocking chair, and then like the other chair is like rocking, like she's with, yeah, that was really creepy. There's a lot of really creepy moments in
These
this
these are
movie.
these are like core memories that I don't get anymore from like watching anything else. Like every time I see a rocking chair, I'm like, "Ugh, that fucking thing moves. I'm
Yeah.
like, if it moves, I'm out of here. I'm like, if that thing moves 1 inch, and it's like I'm an adult and I'm still affected by these ideas that this movie in particular put into my head as a young impressionable kid, and it stays with you. And I almost feel bad for people that are younger now, and they watch like all these films and everything is coming like spelled out for them, everything's blatantly obvious. It's not really creepy unless they show every single detail, and it's not really scary till they show every single detail. But for us, it's like they alluded to things and they showed you just like a snippet of something, and it was enough to stay with you. Closet door closing, I don't want to go by a closet, a rocking chair that rocked twice. I mean, I don't know if the window opens somewhere, but I get a little freaked out if I see it. So it created something in your head, and it made you think of every instant you went in that creepy direction. And I don't watch anything now that even makes me think of that. So it's just these had a big impact, I think, and they did these movies right back then. And I think is because they had to do it, like, they didn't have the CGI and things like that. They didn't have, the ability to like make it perfect or do anything. So I feel like it's creepier, right? When it's not perfect, like you have a string and you're pulling a rocking chair. That's scarier than if you use CGI to put someone in the chair and make it rock. For me, it's way scarier just to see the movement. So, and that's why I like this film. It opened up the door for supernatural and paranormal films for me. I'm not sure if it was my preferred genre when I was younger. I would probably leaned a lot more towards the slasher, and I wanted like that gratification of action and blood and gore and stuff like that. And then you have to really sit down and watch this film and just like get immersed in it, and just you have to feel it to really understand it. And I think that's really where this movie excels, because it's 100% a classic. I'm still watching it. I watch it at least 4 times a year, I would say. If it's on TV, I watch it. It's when any opportunity, I don't miss it. It's one of my favorite films. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I'll say I like it a lot more than I did in my 20s when, again, like you, I was probably more looking for something more high action, more like a lot of murders and kills, and just actually where you see more of the stuff happening on screen versus this. And now I appreciate it a lot more. The last thing I'll say about this movie that I thought made sense, that I liked, and I know when we talked about Lords of Salem, I said how I hated how they did the countdown, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Oh
Friday,
yeah,
how it took out the
yeah.
movie. I think in this movie it makes absolute sense because they're there for 28 days, right? So like it is important to know like what day they're at and kind of preparing for that day 28. So I think that was really effective in this movie. I also really liked the way they showed what happened before the Lutzes moved in. So they tell you, there's like an on-screen crawl that tells you what happened. But I like when they're going through the house, and then as they go into each room, you see like quick
That
shots of,
flashback.
yeah, the flashbacks of DeFeo like blowing away his family. I thought
Oh,
that was really
brutal. It's
effective.
brutal. I mean, and I don't even know if they really showed it. I think they just might have like flashed and eluded it, and you might have heard the gunshot. But
You
I
see
mean,
the
they were
bodies, I believe.
yeah. Oh God,
Yeah.
that's haunting, man. And he like, oh, that's now the little kid's room, and that's the teenager's room. It's like there was a dead body right there, dude. It's
Yeah.
like look out, man. There's probably some blood left on that wall, because mom ain't cleaning it. So,
Yeah, I thought that was a
dad.
really effective way to do it. Okay, so because I know there's like a drinking game coming right after this, and I'm kind of getting nervous. Like, let's wrap this one up. So, Bloody Knives, I am going to give it a 3 because I do like the movie. I think it's good. I think there's again stuff I could do without, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite movies, but I do like it. So I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay, I'll drink to that. 3.
3 seconds.
All right, that was nice. I I like this film, and it's probably no accident that I moved to Amityville. You know, I was drawn to it, and I do get to see the house in real life, and that just kind of makes you feel like you're a part of something. So I feel like I have to support this film. So not only do I like this film, I feel like it's my duty to support this film. So with that, I would recommend everyone to go see this film if you haven't seen the original, if you just saw Ryan Reynolds, or if you saw one of the other 64 other films. Check this one out to see like really where a lot of things started, and where a lot of films in the 80s got a lot of like what a ghost story is. It probably came from this film. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 4.
Oof. You know what? I figured you're gonna give it a 4. And before I do this 4, I will say there is one good thing about the Ryan Reynolds version. And I did go see that in theaters when it came out, and I went with a date who I think it was like a first or second date or something like that. And there is a scene where Ryan Reynolds takes off his shirt and he is completely jacked.
Mhm.
And I think that seeing that got me lucky that night.
Oh, so
Because I visibly looked over at the person I was with and I
word.
saw like she was very happy to see
I
that. And I
mean,
was like, it's gonna be a good night. So I will not totally hate on the remake because it did get me some action. So cheers. Four
cheers. I
seconds.
mean, I get a little turned on by Ryan Reynolds myself, so sorry, I didn't mean to make a joke. The handsome motherfucker.
And I didn't realize he was that jack because all I'd seen him in was like Van Wilder, and then all of a sudden he's got his top off and he's got an 8-pack and looking good. All right, so now that I'm completely turned on and ready to go, what's this thing you want to hit me with?
So I know you had mentioned doing a bit of a drinking game where as many Amityville films that we could watch during this period of time before this podcast, we would take sips in correlation for that. All right, I like that idea, but we're going to do that one at the end. So when we're wrapping up, we're going to do that one. I created another one. So I was going to do this. I felt pretty confident in it, but I did trick you a little earlier when I asked you if you knew how many Amityville horror films there were. And if you gave the right answer, I'd be like, all right, he really researched these movies and he knows them. So now I know you didn't.
I did
So
not.
this is going to be perfect. I create a game called Is It Real?
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be Amityville movie titles.
Oh, this is
And you
interesting.
just have to tell me if it's real or if it's a fake name. So I did invent some myself. And here's the deal. If you get it right, I'll drink. But if you get it wrong, you drink. How does that sound?
I like this. And for everybody playing at home, you could either give your own answers and drink, or you could choose one of us and drink with us. So okay, cool. I like this idea. This is gonna be fun because there are some ridiculous Amityville movies, and
Yes, they are ridiculous. So this is not going to be easy.
no, I don't know if I could tell the
And
difference, but
even someone as in tune as myself would have a difficult time with this, because I did test myself a little bit earlier today just to see how I felt about it. And I do feel fairly confident with my entries. So
so do me a favor.
I have
After you say each one, just tell me if after I guess and like if it's real, tell me if you've seen it. That's what I would like to know. That.
okay, all right, okay. I'll do that.
And then I would like to know. You don't have to give a review, but just be like, I'm sure they're all terrible, but like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
give it one sentence, that'd be cool.
I didn't choose like the cream of the crop
Yeah,
here
yeah.
because
You didn't pick Amityville 1,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I needed kind of like off
Yeah,
sounding
yeah.
films here. So that's the game. Now the next layer of the game is I have a
Oh, come on, I can't remember that.
pretty extensive. I have an extensive list here. So I just want to know if you want to go short or if you want to go big.
Go big, baby. Let's do it.
You want to
Tuesday
go
night.
big? Okay.
Tuesday night.
So I'm gonna do the full list.
Oh shit.
So
I should have asked how many were on the list. That's what I should have did.
no, I was either gonna do half if you wanted to
Let's
go
do it. Let's have
short,
fun. Fuck it.
and I was gonna go big. So I actually have 18 here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
Hold on, let me get IMDb up. No, I'm kidding.
Do you have
All
a
right.
drink in front of you? All right,
Yep.
you're ready. I'm ready because I have a feel. I'm gonna pour a little bit too because I think you're gonna get some right. So let me.
I don't
pour a
know.
little-
Well, I mean, it's 50-50, right? Like, but most of these are going to be a guess unless I've actually like come across it on Tubi TV or somewhere.
All right, if you're listening at home, get your drinks ready, and
Woo!
if
Buckle
Rich
up.
gets it right, I drink. If he gets it wrong, then he drinks. And we're going to start right now. Is it real? Okay. Amityville Bigfoot.
Real.
You're right.
It's funny. I bet the ones that are fake are probably the ones that are more normal, and the ridiculous ones are the real
Listen,
ones.
you could try to analyze this any way you want. You're absolutely wrong. I spent a lot of time on this when I was drunk last night. Okay. All right. And I never saw that. Amityville Moon.
Fake.
That is real.
Ah,
And I have seen it.
mm.
And it's about a werewolf.
Okay. I was gonna say, does it take place on the moon? Like, did the spaceship go?
No, it's when the moon comes out.
Because a lot of these Amityville movies are like people take some item from the house and bring it somewhere else. So I'm just wondering, did they take like? Okay.
So that's where this is going to get interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. Ready? Number 3, Amityville Autopsy.
Real.
That's fake.
Damn.
Drink again. So I don't have to tell you if I saw it because I made that shit up.
Yeah.
So, okay, here we go. Ready? Amityville Cult.
True. Real.
Correct.
And I'm gonna say, if there's any producers or filmmakers out there and you want to license any of these films that Jerry made up, I'll give you my lawyer's address at the very end.
That's it. I'm very affordable. So maybe like $50. I'll give you that name.
So email horrorheadspodcast@gmail.com.
That's usually where our hate mail goes, but you could tap us for some sort of business opportunities as well. Okay, ready? Amityville Haunted Tree.
Fake.
That is fake.
Nice.
Okay.
Oof. Oh, that sounds like it could be one.
Absolutely. Amityville Vibrator.
I'm gonna say real.
It is real.
Is that like a burning angel kind of thing? Did Joanna Angel do that?
So the people lost a whole bunch of items, and the only thing that was still missing was the vibrator.
I actually did drink to that just because
it
sounds ridiculous. Now I want to watch this.
Yeah, it's real. You could watch it. All right. Amityville Lake House.
Fake.
That is fake. Man, you're doing pretty good here.
See, it's the ones that sound like legit that are the fake ones. The fucked up ones like Vibrator are real.
Well, I hope you keep thinking that. That's
I
great.
know.
Amityville Karen.
That's real.
That is real. Yes. Man, I'm losing here. This sucks, man. I think you'd be drinking a lot more.
Your game, man. I still got like 12 to go, so
we're on number 9 right now. So we got a ways to go. Yeah. Amityville Outhouse.
I'm gonna say that's fake.
It's real.
Oh, come on.
It's real. You can IMDb any of these.
What the fuck?
I actually have it up on my phone for any questions that if you really don't believe that it's real.
Should we just pause this and watch that? Just watch it now.
Yeah, these are gonna get worse. So I'm just like warming up here. So this is the first half. This is okay. Right. Ready? Number 10, Amityville Lawnmower.
Fake.
That is fake. Yeah, that's a good job.
We should make that though. That would be a good one. Like, just
it's a good one. Yeah, why not? Yeah. Amityville Killer Priest.
Real.
Fake.
Oh, damn.
Amityville Scarecrow.
Real.
That is real.
Oof. This is getting intense. I'm getting like nervous.
Amityville Goth Girl.
I really hope that's real because I want to watch it. I'm gonna say fake though.
It is fake, yeah.
God damn it. All right, that's the one I want to make.
Damn, you're doing better than I thought here. So you're nailing these. When I tested my wife, it felt 50-50. So you're doing a little better than 50-50, I think. So good for you. If anyone's keeping track out there and they want to email us to let us know how he did.
I have no idea how I'm doing. Buzz, that's how I'm doing.
Okay, we have a few more here. Okay. Amityville New Year's.
Fake.
That is fake. Yeah.
Whew. You're good at coming up with these though. These all sound interesting. I would probably watch them.
Amityville Backpack.
Fake.
That is real.
Damn. Ugh.
All right, last 3 here.
Okay.
And I feel like I lost because I'm feeling a little buzzed right now.
I think everyone lost.
I don't think this went in my favor. I really thought I was going to get you on a lot of these, but you're doing really well. Amityville Alien.
Real.
That is fake.
How did they not make an Amityville Alien movie? That seems like
I don't know, man, but
easy.
I own that, so I just published it. So
Damn.
it's 4/23/24. I just published that name, Amityville Aliens. So it's mine. Okay, here we go. Ready? Amityville Ripper.
Real.
That is real. Okay.
Oof.
Okay, so we're on the final one, and
Oh
you have
shit.
a choice now. You could do just the one sip, or you could bet up to 3 sips.
Oh, triple or
So
nothing.
triple or triple, or you could do 2, or you could do 3. You could do
No,
whatever you
I,
want.
I like this triple because I want to see you. Yeah, I want to see you get fucked up, and I'm feeling pretty confident based on how I've done so far. Let's do it.
Okay, and the last one for a triple sip is Amityville Teabag.
Oh fuck, 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 fuck. I want to say no, but I'm gonna say it's real.
It is real.
Yes, yes. 3 sips, motherfucker.
Mm.
That one is the most.
I finished.
Oh shit, that one is the most ridiculous one, and I was like, it's so ridiculous that
So
has to be real.
it's actually an English production, that one, if that makes
What's the
sense.
premise? Do you know?
No, there's very little information. It just has the origin, the film house, and I guess there's 2 actors in it. So I'm assuming it's a very, very low budget
They made it though,
production,
man.
but it had an IMDb, and it was available for download. So that's how I came across it. And that is the one that made me think to do
Oh, that's funny.
this actual Is It Real game, because I'm like, that's not real. I'm like, how could this be real? I'm like, that's stupid. I click on it. I'm like, it is real. I'm like, there's a plot. I'm like, there's actors. There's a film house that released it, and it has the IMDb page. So, all right. I'm like, what other names are there? And then I start looking. I'm like, these names are ridiculous. This would make a great game. So that's where it came from. It came from Amityville Teabag. I feel like I lost the game. It didn't go the way I thought it would.
So like it's 2 male actors in Amityville Teabag. I really hope it's about tea, not something else.
It's English. It's English.
Haunted ball sack or something.
I mean, I thought that, but when I saw that it was like a UK thing, I just assumed that, they drink a lot of tea over there. So maybe there's a haunted tea bag, or maybe someone gets tea bagged, or the Arabian goggles or something like that, or I don't know what's
The old
going to
Trojan War
happen
helmet.
here. Oh man, you know what? This did not work out at all. I definitely got a little loopy on that, people, because I thought I was going to be sitting back and watching him drink for all 18. So that went against everything.
All right, so on that note, we are going to pivot to the second movie that we're going to discuss today, and it is Amityville Possession, which is the second film that was released right after Amityville Horror. And this might be a quick conversation because I'm going to say I absolutely hated this movie for a lot of different reasons. And like when we say like, I'm not gonna say like this is the worst movie ever made, but this is one of the and I compare movies. When I say worst movie, I compare it to films of that budget and of that type. This is one of the worst movies that I think I've ever seen for a lot of different reasons, or it was at least one of the hardest ones for me to watch. And just before I get into my critique on it, one thing I didn't know, and maybe that would make me think of the movie a little different, is I didn't realize that this movie is supposed to be more of like a prequel to Amityville Horror, and that the family that is in Amityville Possession is supposed to be the DeFeos. I actually did not know that when I watched it. It wasn't clear. They changed their names, of course. But that is actually what is supposedly happening, is that this is the events that led up to Ronald DeFeo murdering his family. And, the characters are very much different than I would think that were in reality. Like the son in Amityville Possession, who ends up killing his family, starts off seemingly normal. However, he is not, as he has an incestuous relationship with his sister, which was a very big shock to me and something I wasn't prepared for. But I think what I really don't like about there's 2 things I really don't like about this movie. One is I have a hard time with any movie that has a lot of abuse towards kids and women, and this does. The father in the movie beats the shit out of his kids, hits his wife. He's a terrible, absolutely horrible human being, and it's hard to watch that. But the other thing I really don't like about this movie is it almost is two different movies, neither of which are very good. So the first 45 minutes focuses on the family in the house and how the house, I guess, possesses the son to murder his family. And all that happens, and he murders his family, and there's still 45 minutes left in the movie. And the last 45 minutes are this priest breaking the son out of the hospital, taking him, I think, back to the house, and then trying to perform an exorcism on him. But the last 45 minutes were so boring and so anticlimactic that it was like really hard to get through for me. So you have this first 45 minutes, which was like a rush to get to the point where he kills the family. And then you have this 45 minutes that just drags on with this really boring, nonsensical exorcism scene. So it falls apart in multiple places. And like I absolutely will never watch this movie again. And I'd never seen it before. So that's my overall feelings of this movie. There's a lot of things in this movie that are just weird and just like not scary and just bizarre, weird choices. I will say like the lead actor who plays the dad is Burt Young, who played Paulie in Rocky, and he basically is the same character as Paulie in Rocky, just an asshole, only more so. And it's hard to like. First of all, it's hard to see him playing that role and not thinking of Rocky, but also he's just so despicable. But you think like, okay, here's this man. He's this like fat, drunk, angry loser. He's got four kids, some of them young. So like he's still like fucking apparently. Like it just seems so odd. Like I don't. It was a weird casting choice for me. And I guess they were trying to show that the father was like this brute asshole and got what he was coming to him. And I don't know, but it was really hard to watch, man. I had a hard time with this one. And if we weren't watching it for the show, I would have turned this off 15 minutes into this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably watched this 100 years ago. Didn't remember watching it. Probably didn't realize it was Amityville 2 either. So Amityville the Possession comes up all the time. So I just thought it was an easy one to obtain and an easy one to talk about. So just to give some kind of high level plot here, the Montelli family, they move into that famous Amityville home. And I mean, they immediately start experiencing paranormal activity. There's objects flying around, there's furniture moving and voices. As Rich mentioned, this is an extremely dysfunctional family with an abusive father. The mother is oddly religious. She's like constantly like trying to like go to church or like call the priest like that. I don't understand how that's like her first reaction for everything.
No, I think it makes
um
sense to me because I think she's like abused and like that's her.
that's her kind of like her outlet there to, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how I viewed it because I just thought that I didn't like her either. So it was a little odd. Yeah, the passive daughter, the weird teenage son, pain in the ass kids. But basically, they moved to the house, and pretty quickly after that, the teenage guy, Sonny, I guess,
Right. That's the
well,
son's name. Yeah.
that was his name. He starts to have like these vivid, haunting nightmares. The house ultimately starts possessing him to attack his family. Yeah, super, super weird. I mean, they have like that possession scene where he kind of does like that Fright Night transformation kind of
Oh
thing
yeah,
where
with the
it
bubbles
looks like
coming
he's
out of his
turning into
neck.
like a werewolf and thing like that, and he's like driven to kill his family, and that was pretty brutal, and it almost kind of felt like cathartic. I didn't like this family anyway. I think my note is I hate all these people instantly, and I don't know if it was their fault. I mean, it just was like the most miserable family in the world, and I hated them all. I actually wanted him to shoot them again just to make sure they're all dead
Oh,
because I hated these people,
I
all of
had a
them.
different perspective. Like I hated the father, Burt Young. I felt like the kids were just the kids. They were just abused kids. The wife, again, like not likable, but also someone who's dealing with trauma. And the daughter, again, she's having sex with her older brother. Like there's a ton of trauma there. And I think if this movie like just focused on the family and the haunting, it would have been hard to watch. But if it was 90 minutes of that, not 45 minutes of exorcism, I think there's a lot of themes you could have gone into because I do think it's interesting a family dealing with all kinds of trauma, moving into a haunted house and having everything exacerbated by that. Like that could have been really like psychological.
Again, the flawed characters that the house is going
Yeah, I
after.
thought that would have been really interesting if you developed all that, because again, I personally really felt bad for the daughter because she doesn't know any better. You get the feeling that her and her brother have been fucking since they were little,
Really?
or maybe not fucking, but there was something odd going
Something,
on
yeah,
there.
there was a strange closeness to them. And for anyone who wants to know, the daughter, her name is Patricia. She's played by Diane Franklin, who you might remember from the French Girl from Better Off Dead, which was a
Oh
much
shit, that's her?
yeah, which
I
was
didn't
a
realize
much,
that.
yeah, much different film, much more lighthearted, and that is her. So I was actually always a fan of hers,
Yeah, I had a
and I
crush on
was
her
really,
for
yeah,
Better Off Dead.
I was super super surprised to see her in this film. And the scene that Rich is speaking of is really Sonny for some reason decides he wants to play like some sort of photographer, and he wants to like take pictures of his very young teenage sister. And I'm gonna guess she was probably 14 or 15. She was probably way too young, and somehow he convinces her to strip, and then it alludes that they eventually have sex, and she falls in love with him after that. She kind of has like this attachment and some sort of jealousy, and she kind of looks at him as like a boyfriend. And this is a really really strange dynamic, because from what I understand, I think Sonny was about 20, his 20th birthday, or is it 22nd birthday? I mean,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
he was in his 20s, and this is obviously some sort of teenage girl. I mean, there were so many issues wrong with that, and I'm just surprised that like Amityville tried to take on like some sort of topic such as like an incestuous relationship. And I don't know if they were just trying to say like this house is so fucked up it's going to make you do really fucked up things, or if they were really just trying to tackle the topic as like this is like over the level abuse. I don't know what they were trying to do. Whatever they were trying to do, they didn't have the talent to do it, and it just came off like, as I say it a lot, it came off as ick, and it was gross, and it made you feel bad about yourself for even watching it. And I know I watched it a couple weeks before you did, but for some reason I thought that you had remembered this movie, and knew that this was going to be in it. And even though I had a strange feeling from kind of like the beginning of the movie, I didn't really know that they were going to show anything or anything was going to happen. It was absolutely shocking. I was blown away that like what they did show, and didn't understand how it really connected to anything.
Yeah, so a couple of things on that. So like early on there, yeah, there's a scene I wrote a note before I got to the incestuous scene is there's a scene where they're, I think, looking at one of the bedrooms, and I wrote down they're flirting. They're a little too close. Like it just seemed odd to me, but I was like, you know what? Like maybe that's just like whatever. But I'm like, this is odd, like how, yeah, flirty they were being.
A touchy feely brother and
Yeah, it was
sister.
odd. It was very
Yeah,
odd. And then when we get to the scene that you're talking about, the reason why I think this has gone on for a long time, and maybe this was the first time they actually had sex, I don't believe so, but it's because when he asks her to like take off her clothes, she does it very willingly. Like it's not even like, oh, I don't want to
he
do
was like
that.
stop, and then she's like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, so it just
It's
seemed
like,
like they had done
yeah.
this before. Like this is the first time they had done this, and it wasn't even like she was uncomfortable. She's like, "Oh, I'm naked in front of my older brother," like blah blah blah, and then he's gonna come over and kiss me. So like I get the feeling that they've been doing this for a while. And again, and she does have feelings towards him, and since the house is kind of changing him, he starts to be more angry towards her, and she's really struggling with this because again, you get the feeling this is like her first hopefully first, like maybe her dad even molested her, because I wouldn't be shocked.
I
But
think I think maybe that's the direction I feel like
yeah,
we could
and again,
go in.
I really felt for that character, and as hard as it is to watch that, I think if they had done that effectively and like really kind of played on that, this movie could have at least been like thought provoking and better. But instead, it's just they just rushed through all this. It almost seemed like, again, they, like you said, the ick. They just threw it in there just to like throw it in there. I did read somewhere when I was just researching Amityville that there's a million rumors about actually what really happened with the DeFeos, but there is that rumor that the Ronald and the older sister were sleeping together because
The one
again,
that cursed at my father, yes.
yeah, it's possible because, well, he did say that again, him and her plan to kill the family together. Now, again, this is just the words of a murderer, But I think people took that saying like, oh, maybe they were in cahoots and maybe there was something going on. Probably not, but again, you never know, right? Especially like there's a lot of secrets behind doors, especially in suburbia. Like who knows what the hell's happening. So I think they got the idea from that potentially. But again, like the way it was portrayed in the movie, it just was like it's there, and then but it wasn't the main point of the movie. So it just seemed to be again shock value.
I can't even think of another movie that maybe outside of like Flowers in the Attic or something like
Yeah,
that,
yes, yes.
that where or this was even tackled, but that was a film that was about that subject matter, and this is not. So this was just came off as shocking. So I mean, that's really the main talking point about this film. It's really not a good film. There's nothing amazing that happens in it. There's terrible special effects. There's a weak storyline.
The scene where the brushes are just painting on the
Yeah,
wall. It's
it's
just like
terrible. I
weird.
mean, there's not a lot of good things, and I have the same exact note that you have, and we're going to go right back to what we were talking about earlier tonight. The last half hour was a very 70s like movie, even though this was early 80s. It just turned into like a crime drama. It lost like all those elements of horror, and it was just kind of like going through like the mundane and the day to day of like trying to get this kid released so this priest could perform this weird exorcism that doesn't really work out for him anyway. And you know, he's trying to fight for his rights, saying that Sonny was possessed and he didn't know what he did and he should be set free. And ultimately Sonny is released, but he escapes back to the house anyway. And that's where the big showdown occurs, where he tries to perform this botched exorcism with terrible effects. And I mean, I guess it ends with the house exploding. So we're supposed to believe that the Amityville house exploded, which I mean, there can't be 63 other films if the house exploded.
Well,
So.
it explodes, but then it doesn't. It's like it explodes and it's like right back to normal. And then in part three, I which I did watch, the house does explode and goes to shit. But I remember thinking that like, oh, there's all these fires happening out the window, and then they show the house like normal. And
It's
yeah, the
absolutely
and
fine.
like
Yeah.
when they're doing the exorcism, like at first, like again, they show the Sonny's got like some kind of transformation. And at first I'm like, oh, this makeup is actually pretty decent. And then his like face starts falling to pieces, and he kind of looked like something out of like The Fly. It just looked really bad.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
just
it was
like,
so bad. Oh
yeah,
my
it just
god.
looked trashy. And like it's funny because like at first I'm like, okay, the makeup at least in this scene is good. Maybe I'll give it half a bloody knife. And then I was like, oh wait, no, it went to shit. Even the writing is really bad. Like there's this scene where I think Sonny and the sister are talking. It might have been the pose scene. I think it's right before they actually make love, and she's just like, you know, it's strange. Like, I don't think mommy wants to make love to daddy anymore. Yeah, you know why? You know, because he's a fucking asshole. That's
Because
why.
he looks like he smells like a sausage. He's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, he's
he's
like
abusive
gross. He's
and he's sweaty and disgusting and he's an asshole and he should
yeah.
die a horrible death. Yeah, this movie was bad. I had no idea it was this bad. I did watch a couple other Amityvilles, and I think we should probably maybe just skip to some other ones that may be better than this one, and just wrap this up with saying I don't recommend it. I wouldn't tell anyone to watch this film. It doesn't really make a lot of sense as far as the canon of Amityville films. You could skip this one if you want. If you want to be freaked out and watch something which I consider absolutely disgusting, then watch it. But otherwise, just move on from this one. You know.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 0.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 just because it has Amityville in the title, and you know they showed the house and that was it. But outside of that, it was a pretty horrible movie. So I'll give you a cheers and I'll drink one.
Yeah, I'll drink one, but yeah. And it's tough to give a movie a 0. Like I gotta really not like a movie, but this is something again I would never watch. I will never watch this again. And there's movies I say I'll never watch, and I'm like, all right, I'll give it another try. I will never watch this again. That's it. This is a fucking terrible movie. All right, so I know we're not ready to wrap up yet. So let's like
No, yeah, I want to tap into like just a couple quick snippets of a couple of Amityvilles that I think are noteworthy. How does that sound?
let's do it. Let's do it. Because I actually did watch 3. I know we're gonna play the drinking game or like how many other movies we watched.
We are. So don't tell me
Okay,
exactly
I
what
just
you.
did.
Well, all right. Well, you don't
I
know how
did
many
3.
I watched.
I did
Okay.
3, and that was all I could really tolerate. So I did 3.
I watched quite a few, but I only have you know, a couple of snippets on like one or two of them here. And The first one I definitely want to talk about is Amityville, The Awakening, which is from 2017 with Bella Thorne. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch that one. I know I recommended it,
I
and
couldn't
it was
find
just
it. I think it's on Stars, which I don't have.
so. I think it's a cool movie. So, for anyone who has never seen it, Bella Thorne, who's probably one of the bigger stars in the film, she plays this character Belle, who moves into the 112 Ocean Avenue home, which is the Amityville home, to start fresh. And they got a deal on the house. I guess that's the running joke here for this, film series, is that you're going to save money by purchasing this purchasing this house, because they have to pay for medical care for her twin brother who's in like this comatose state. The mother, Joan, doesn't mention anything about the home and that it has a past to Belle. And she doesn't really know anything until she shows up to her first day at school. And basically, everyone kind of knows that she's the new person living in that freaky house. So they kind of treat her as like the strange girl. And really, only like one guy is interested in being her friend. And he's like, obviously, like us, he's like some sort of like horror freak that just like wants to get into the house and see what's going on. He's obsessed with Amityville and the legends and stuff like that. Really, right off the bat, like a lot of paranormal things start happening, and this brother who's been in this comatose state starts to show improvement. But it really seems like the healing is attached to the house and not really to some sort of real improvement. So, they start to realize that maybe this is something bad and it's not good. Turns out that it is Belle's fault, who's Belle Thorne, that he is paralyzed because she had some bullies and her brother stuck up for him and ended up throwing him out like this window, and he becomes paralyzed. So I think the storyline to this is really interesting. It's a modern storyline. It's a bit of a teen horror at points. I think the acting is really well, but I think what I like the most about this film, which no other Amityville film does, is they acknowledge Amityville, the movie. They acknowledge that it's a real thing, and in this movie, they actually watch it,
Oh, get out of here.
and yeah, and they have an argument about which one they should watch. Should they watch the Ryan Reynolds one, or should they watch the original
Oh, that's
one? And
clever.
yeah, and Bella Thorne's like, no, man, remakes suck,
Ah,
and they end up like watching the original one at 3:15 in the morning, and they don't know if that's what like causes like some weird things happening, but really her friends are the ones really driving, letting her know like all the details and the historical information about this house, for Belle to kind of realize that some of the things happening with her brother are probably nefarious and not like a miracle. And it does turn out that the brother, James, who is comatose, is possessed, and he ends up waking up and like killing the family. So
oh
it's
shit.
pretty crazy. Yeah. And I think it's a good film. I think it's a good watch. And outside of the original, I would recommend this one to watch if you could find it. Yeah, I really think it's a good film. And Bella Thorne really fell off a cliff in her career, but I think this is still when she was a little bit normal, and I think she just started dating Little Peep at this point. So, it was an interesting time, it was an interesting casting choice, but I think she did a great job. And I'm gonna talk about one more too, and then you could like chime in with whatever you wanted to discuss. But there's this film, and it's really bad, So I'm gonna preface this that like 99% of all Amityville films are terrible, but that's okay. It's
Even
okay
Amityville
because
Vibrator.
yeah, I'm sure it's horrible, but sometimes you just want to watch a horrible film, and it's okay to like bad things. Not every film has to be a great film to like it. So this film I had absolutely no expectations about. It's fairly new, and I was 100% sure it was gonna be horrible. I just wasn't sure like what level of horrible it's gonna be. So it's Amityville Uprising, and it was Thomas J. Churchill film from 2022.
Oh, Thomas Churchill.
Yeah, Thomas
Yeah,
Churchill.
yeah, I know him. I worked
You
with
know
him
that
on.
guy. So you might
Yeah.
know this person who starred in it, Kelly Ryder,
Oh, she
who
was in
was
my Holy Terror. Yeah, she was in the second film I ever did. Yeah,
She
yeah.
was in let's see, let's talk about her. She was in Clown Motel 2.
Which I've
And
not seen.
I gotta be honest with you, I love Clown Motel 1. So I'm really curious what Clown Motel 2 is all about. She was in Bikini Car Wash Massacre, which sounds like a film that I tried making about 10 years ago, but it didn't
Which I
work
would watch
out.
also.
Yes, it didn't work out. And most notably, she was in a film called Holy Terror.
Yeah,
So
no, Kelly played the lead in the second film I ever directed, Holy Terror, which was about an exorcism, and she played the wife whose son tragically died, and she starts communicating with him, his what she thinks is his ghost, and turns out to be a demon that she unleashes who possesses her sister, and a bunch of crazy shit happens. And you could find that on Tubi TV. Yeah, and Thomas Churchill I had worked with. He was an actor in a movie, Samurai Cop 2, which I wrote and produced, and I got to know him from that. But I haven't actually, no, I did speak to him recently, but I hadn't spoken to him in a long time. Kelly too. Kelly reached out to me recently for something, and it's funny because I hadn't heard from her in a long time.
well, I thought this film was entertaining, but I would recommend Holy Terror over
Yes.
Amityville Uprising.
So what's the plot in Amityville Uprising? I missed it.
Basically, there's an explosion at a plant, and it causes acid rain to fall just in Amityville. And basically anyone who's touched by the rain turns into a zombie. So it's actually a zombie film, and Amityville is overridden by zombies. And I'm going to tell you what's cool about that this film. So this film was clearly filmed during like the height of COVID. And what they did is they open up probably like the first 10 minutes of this film with real Amityville footage, and it is straight from the town of Amityville, and it's all real. It shows like the library, it shows the court, it shows the bar I go to, it shows my house, it shows the police precinct, it shows a whole bunch of shit, but it's like real. It's all real footage, but there's no cars, there's no people, there's no nothing. It's like it's super cool that they use real footage though.
Yeah, no, that's cool, and especially as the first Amityville 1, 2, and 3, I believe, were all filmed in Jersey.
Yeah, so you don't like it. It's actually Amityville. So you see when they're driving, you see the sign for 110 South to get to Amityville. There's a lot of like real authentic footage. You see there's like a square in the middle of town. You see that. You really see everything. You see the road I drive up every single day. I mean, it really gave me like a really good feeling and a proud feeling to kind of be from here, and to think that someone like you know used the real footage and not like fake or stock footage or like in some sort of like Hollywood warehouse where they're just like it's not really the town. This was really the town, so I thought that was cool. Outside of that, the film was pretty
Oh, it
horrible.
sounds dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters, I mean, they just become like it takes place in a police precinct. All the characters are cops, including Kelly Ryder, and I think Thomas Churchill does play a character in this film as well. And there's this horrible emergency situation, and everyone outside is a zombie, and the only people that are okay are the people inside, which are the cops and a few other people. But really, everyone just kind of like falls apart during this emergency, and they all become buffoons. And every scene where they try to do something serious, like I don't know how it didn't start off bad, but the acting just gets progressively worse throughout the film. Like it like I don't know if they just couldn't do reshoots or whatever it was on the scenes, but you could feel the quality going down as the film progresses. It was really bad acting, but there are a ton of brutal kills because there are zombies. So either the zombies are ripping apart people, or zombies heads are exploding and things like that. And there was no survivors, so it was actually everyone died in Amityville.
Wow, your
So
town
it
wiped
was,
out.
yeah, it was completely wiped off the map. So I thought that was really interesting. I think I liked it a lot because like that explosion, which was supposed to happen at some sort of plant, maybe some sort of military plant, was actually like they showed a map, and it was pretty funny. So it's the park that's next to my house. So I was like, oh shit, man, I would have been in that line of fire if this really happened. So I think whatever I liked about this film was just like its closeness to me and my personal feelings about like the town. Everything else just kind of fell apart.
So I watched a couple of Amityville films. I watched one that was Amityville Dollhouse, and basically the premise is they get a dollhouse from the Amityville Horror House, and of course, creepy shit happens. Again, really low budget movie, not good. I was actually kind of bearing with it. I'm like, okay, I could get into this, and then there was one scene in particular that just I had to like I was like, okay, this sucks. It was basically this. There's this like nerdy loser kid that lives in this house, and like his dead dad comes to visit him, and it's like this gross zombie, but like it was bad makeup, and it just like it took me out of the movie. And that was pretty bad. And then I watched Amityville It's About Time, which is about a man takes a clock that was from the Amityville house and brings it home. And of course, fucked up shit happens. And this movie is like very B movie. It like the quality is like a little better. I think it was in the 80s, so it feels like an 80s horror movie. It wasn't good, but it's one of those ones where if you were like really high and it just happened to be on TV at like 2 in the morning, you'd probably like watch it and like would just get in the zone of it. So it wasn't like it was like terrible. I would never like put it on my own, but I could see like, okay, if this is on, I'd probably watch it. It was a little ridiculous at points too. And again, it's about a haunted clock from the Amityville house. And there's a lot of things in it that don't make sense. Like there's this one scene early on where the homeowner goes for like a walk, and then he gets attacked by this dog who like really fucks up his leg, bites him really terribly. And he has this leg injury the whole movie where it's gory and gross. But then you find out the dog didn't actually bite him. So like, where did this come from? Yeah, the movie didn't make any sense
Plot hole.
whatsoever. Yeah, no, it just didn't make any sense. But again, if you're up late at night, you're stoned. But you would probably get into this movie. So I watched that one, and then I watched Amityville 3D, which I
Wow,
guess
you
was the
watched quite a bit.
yeah.
Okay.
I watched three. I watched three, and that was the one that came after Amityville Possession. It was actually the last, I believe, theatrical Amityville movie
So
because
that
it
was the one with the
bombed.
well in it, from what I understand.
That did have the well in it, and
Yeah,
it
better.
it bombed, and they never made another theatrical movie ever again after that.
Lori
It's
Loughlin was in that, right?
I don't remember if she
She
was
was
in
the
it.
kid. She was the kid, I think, the
It,
teenage kid. Yeah.
it's possible that that was her. I know Meg Ryan was in it.
Yeah, they're both
Um,
in them. Yeah, that's it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Huge,
I
huge, huge cast in a terrible movie.
Yeah, and look, you watch the movie now, and probably when it came out, the big thing was the 3D gimmicks, like things coming at you. And when you watch that movie at home, it doesn't like have the same effect. And you get the feeling that, a movie like this, they probably really spent most of their time on those gags, on the 3D stuff, so less focus on plot and things like that. What I thought was really ridiculous about the movie, though, which was made it hard to watch, was there's this man, and his job is basically to debunk paranormal stuff, and he doesn't believe the Amityville house is haunted. He believes it's all bullshit, so he buys the house. And within a day, someone dies in the house tragically. Like someone, like I forget who, but one of these guys just like dies in the house. He's like, okay, no big deal, it just happens. Guy just died, whatever. 2 days later, his like girlfriend freaks out, says, "I'll never go in the house again." Like that's it, and like has a complete like panic attack. Like and a bunch of other things happened like that, and the guy's still like must be explained. Yeah, like how much more do you need like to actually believe that no, this house is fucked up? And it isn't until his like daughter actually dies that he's like, oh, maybe there is something going on. But it was just wild because yeah, it's like I can see maybe you let one thing go, but then it's like after like four terrible things happen, like you got to be like, okay, this house is a little fucked up. And the movie's kind of like it starts like an Amityville movie. I feel like it was very influenced by Poltergeist because there's some stuff in that's very similar. It kind of falls apart at the end. They blow up the house at the very end, like all this crazy shit happens, kind of similar to like a Poltergeist. I didn't like the movie. It was kind of just boring to be honest with you. I liked it better than Amityville 2, The Possession, though, just because it was at least a movie. But I probably wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah, I feel that, and just I do recommend people trying to watch any part of the Amityville, film selection. And I mean, they are mostly goofy. They're mostly silly, but it's fun. And I think fun, ridiculous horror has its place.
Yeah, not everything needs to
So
be great
far,
cinema.
yeah.
Like some things can just be entertaining. That's fine too.
The the original, the OG, that is great cinema. It's it's fantastic. outside of that, it falls apart. But if you kind of like are into like a cool ghost story or fall into like that lore, or you just want to like see some cool Amityville stuff, I say check them out. I say check out as many as you can. And speaking of that, during this time, I watched 6 films of
Oh
the
shit.
Amityville
What were the
horror
other
theme.
ones? What else did you
So
watch?
so I watched Amityville. I watched Amityville the Possession. I watched Amityville Harvest, which was it's like a weird documentary crew, follows this guy who owns a haunted manor, and just like all the things that happen there. It's very loosely based on Amityville, and I don't think it really takes place in Amityville.
You found
Uh,
footage?
no, it's not. Certain aspects of it are, but when they're shooting like the documentary sections, but most of it isn't. Then I watched Amityville Moon, and there was some real shots of Amityville in that movie. There's like the train station and a couple other like notable areas that you would recognize. That's about a werewolf. It really was awful. It was hard to get through. I watched The Awakening, Bella Thorne, and I watched Uprising with the zombies.
Oh,
So
so
it
six,
was
including the Amityville 1 and
yes,
2. Okay, so then
yes.
I've watched 5 then. Okay, so
Wow.
we're close.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we should just wrap this up and take our shots, man. Let's
All
let's
right. So
let's take our.
I gotta do 6 seconds, which will finish this drink. You gotta do 5 seconds, which will maybe finish yours. Let's cheers.
I just want to say this was a great episode, one of my favorite topics, and I hope everyone enjoyed it because we're about to enjoy these drinks right now. So cheers.
Cheers.
Mm.
Ugh. Actually, I
That
have one
was
more sip left that I'm gonna sip
whew,
after we sign off.
that was a
So
lot.
so the next episode we're going to do is we're going to talk about Strangers and Strangers Pray at Night, since the new Strangers is coming out in theaters. Probably that will probably drop in theaters right when we're about to drop that episode. So come on back and check that one out. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Good night.